Why has the issue of the independence referendum come to the fore again this week?
Well, the Coalition Cabinet in Westminster has been discussing today what attitude to take to the SNP's proposals. It looks like they're going to say to the SNP and to the Scottish Parliament, we'll give you the power to have a referendum. Power actually lies with Westminster formally, and therefore that is a challenge to Alex Salmond and the SNP to come back with their response. The SNP say it's Scotland's referendum, we promised it, and Scotland should hold it, but it's a big challenge for Alex Salmond.
Was any of this unexpected, or is this a matter of course so far, or has the revelations today been sort of surprising?
Well, the Scotsman reported before Christmas that this option was being considered. I think what's interesting is now that the UK coalition, and I think both parties, the Tories and the Liberal Democrats in the coalition, have by and large agreed on this, and in producing within the next couple of days, as we expect them to do, some options for how the referendum should be held. This takes it on another level. What it does is it challenges the SNP to come back and say why they don't want this to happen, because the coalition will say we are helping you to do this and to do it legally and to let people in Scotland have a say. Of course, they're going to set probably some kind of deadline or timescale for it and going to ask for some rules on fairness in the question, and that's where the debate will come back.
And of course it's in David Cameron's interest to have this as sooner rather than later. So do you believe that there will be a 18-month, something like that, time limit, or is this all speculation?
Well, predicting when the referendum will happen is a difficult game because the SNP today have said they want to stick to their timetable, and their timetable is the second half of the Scottish Parliament. However, I suspect there may even be a coming together on that, because the coalition can't do it immediately. They'll have to introduce legislation, they'll have to talk about what the rules are going to be, so there could be some coming together. I think we might still see a referendum earlier than 2016, which is the absolute limit of it. Exactly when, I don't know. There's a huge amount of negotiations and politics back and forward to go on before then.
And there is the other issue of the Devo Max option, a possible third option, which I think the Scottish National Party were pushing for. Do you think that's a likely outcome?
It's looking less likely that so-called Devo Max is going to be on the ballot paper. The SNP still haven't ruled it out, and there's several problems with that. One is the coalition in London are pushing for one question, a straight question of independence, in or out. The second problem is no one has yet defined what you mean by Devo Max precisely, and defining that in a way that people could answer a question in a three-question referendum would be difficult as well. So I think the chances of Devo Max being on the ballot paper are probably receding.
And do the Scottish Government, do they just basically have to accept whatever Westminster gives them under these legal conditions? Or do they have any power to influence what goes forward?
Well, formally, the Scottish Government don't have power over the Constitution. When the Scottish Parliament was set up, some things were reserved to Westminster. One of those things was further constitutional change. But what they do have is they do have a political mandate. The SNP were elected the unprecedented first majority government in Scotland. So they can argue, and they are arguing, that we have a mandate from the people to hold a referendum, whether or not it's technically legal or not. So they can come back and argue the mandate argument and say that we have a right to hold this. The problem will be if Westminster pushes ahead, do the SNP say no, we're not going to go with a referendum? And the whole politics around that will be interesting as to how they address that.
And you said obviously the SNP are using this mandate argument obviously after last year's election. Where do you see their next step being as we go forward after this week?
Well, what the SNP will do, I'm sure, is to challenge the legitimacy of Westminster in terms of ordering this referendum or being seen to order this referendum. What the SNP will do is they'll play the London card. They'll say this is London trying to tell Scotland what to do. We're the government of Scotland. We have a mandate. We should press ahead with a referendum. And for the coalition in London, it will be absolutely vital that it's seen to be the Scots leading the debate, even though they are giving the powers. If it is seen as just David Cameron telling Scotland what to do, that works to the SNP's advantage, whatever the constitutional niceties are.
So it's all about perception. That's a key part of this debate.
A lot of it is about perception. It always is in politics. And the one thing that the coalition shouldn't ever underestimate is Alex Salmond in particular, his power, his tactical nous, his strategic understanding of politics, and also his populist appeal. And if they are seen to be imposing things against the will of the Scottish people, as the SNP will present it, that poses dangers for the coalition.